Happy Halloween and welcome back to Lady Jane Books. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome one of my dearest booktube buddies and the queen of poetry live streams, Sam from Greener Side of Sam. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Hello, everyone. I know I've been gone for quite a while. Life is really busy. It's a good busy, but it's really busy. And so eventually I want to come back and start talking about books. But yes, it's been a while, so I'm sorry for that.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled that you made time to read. This is backwards. Ghost Eaters with me. I am so excited about our discussion. I think this is the first time we've read a horror book together, Sam. Am I right
I
in thinking
think
that?
so. I think so. Last time we read Geisha Life.
That was not horror. No, no, that
No,
wasn't
it was
horror. Yeah.
not.
Yeah. So this is gonna be a totally different, like Halloweeny type of stream. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. I was so thankful that you read this with me. Before we start, I just want to say hello to some people. Hi, Anne. How are you? The cover looks terrifying. I actually think it's beautiful. Look at this, like
Mhm.
art. Look at this. Look at the contrast. It's like sculpture. It's really incredible. I think this is actually one of the most beautiful covers I've seen in a long time. And I like this grayscale. Just oh my gosh. I actually
Mhm.
saw a film recently called A Ghost Story, and the whole premise is that there's a guy in a white sheet and he, is out in the afterlife. And it's very reminiscent of this, but this is a more terrifying version of it. So I was
Mhm.
absolutely intrigued when I saw this book cover. I personally think it's gorgeous.
I also I like that they used this picture as well because are we doing spoilers?
We will be.
Okay, okay,
It's probably second half, so sorry. I should have
okay.
put that in the thing.
All
So we're going
right.
to talk about our general ideas, and then we're going to let you know about the spoilery time because we don't want to spoil you too
Okay, I'll
soon for
wait for
this,
the
but we will.
spoilers.
Yeah, but it's very good. It's a good little detail. So we'll hang on to that in the spoiler section. And we also have Jason Crossread's book. Hi, Jason. How are you? Thank you for stopping in. So Sam, what did you think? What was your like ideas about the book before you read it? Did it meet your expectations? Did you like it? We have to just give the overview first.
Okay, so I'm one of those people where I don't even like to read like the synopsis of the book. I You were like, "Do you want to read this with me?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And so I just picked it up because I really liked the cover. And I was like, "Well, I don't know what it's about, but it's a ghost story and I like ghost stories."
Me too.
And I I sat in a bar for 4 hours and I read it straight through because it was so good.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Like,
And
it just kept me hooked.
it
There
did.
scene after scene, it almost played like a movie in my head. It was so
Absolutely.
good. It captured me in. I really liked the characters. Like, I hate to, like, bring in this book again, but I thought of the secret history when I
Mm,
was reading this, and I was like, because it was very, like, character centered
mm.
in, like,
It
the
definitely is.
schools, and, I didn't like the character development. There was really no character development in The Secret History, but in
Spoiler
here,
alert, there
I
was
felt
no
like there
character
was a
development in
lot.
this history.
I felt like the characters were a lot more fleshed out in this, and I could actually feel what the characters were feeling.
I agree. I think this is some of the most dynamic character work I have seen in a long time. And this one, it was so deep in every single one. Like there really wasn't one that you weren't interested in or any, chapters or POVs you skipped. I personally was very invested in like each and every character. And even like our main character had such a complex psyche and such complex
Mhm.
emotional structure. It was incredible. So I will commend the author on that. And Anne says, agreeing to read books without knowing anything about them has gotten me into so much trouble. But at least for Sam, it turned out good. Yes.
It
Thank you,
did.
Anne.
It
Thank
did.
you.
And what I liked about it was, it wasn't what I expected. Like, I expected a ghost, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it was
It was
good.
so original to me, I was like, I don't think I've ever read anything like this before, but it works so well.
It does. It does. It is. And what's so interesting is that it deals with some very, very heavy themes and very
Mhm.
real themes, but then wraps it up in a supernatural element, which, but, and thinking about that objectively, that sounds like it could go very corny, very
Mhm.
fast, but it wasn't. It was so brilliantly and masterfully executed that it all blended so well together and every theme made sense, every dialogue, every turn, every twist. It was really well thought out. Like, oh my
Mhm.
goodness. So,
And I like how it also brought about themes of manipulation
and
and
interpersonal
relationships
relationships.
and yep.
Mm. And some darker things too, which we'll get into soon. But again, included in this thing of a ghost story, which everyone can kind of relate and kind of get that atmosphere as well, but have such direct and such meaningful themes as well. It was just so good. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
I agree. I've
I
never read a book like this before.
yeah, and I also felt like because a lot of the times the dialogue will be really corny, but it wasn't. It
Right.
felt like these people would actually be
Real.
saying this in real life.
It felt very real, like,
Mhm.
you could say these people almost exist, and you know,
Yes.
like, the type of personalities and characteristics, like, I feel like a lot of people know people like this,
Mhm.
but it was so well developed, so, oh my goodness.
I hope
Oh
it's
my
made
goodness.
into a movie too because I would totally watch it.
I think so too, I think it would make a fantastic horror movie, like an independent horror
Mhm.
movie, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like an A24 type of vibe, type of
Yeah, it
thing.
would be really good as a low budget movie too.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Mhm.
and no big like, big stars, you know what I mean? Just, like,
Right.
everyday people, which is pretty cool. Mhm. Have you read anything by this author before? It's written by Clay
No, I haven't.
McLeod Chapman. I know with, Blackheart's Book Club, we read The Remaking by him, um, and unfortunately, I had to miss that month, so this is my first time I'm reading this author as well, but I feel like I wanna read another book of his,
I
you
do
know what I mean?
too. I just really like his writing style.
Right. Something I like about the writing style is he does show not tell very
Mhm.
well. And
Mhm.
sometimes I get a little bit bothered when there's kind of this mix of plot pushing action and what the characters are doing, and then linking it into really beautiful, like philosophical writing style. Sometimes
Mhm.
that annoys me. Sometimes it feels like it's overbearing or it's trying too hard, but in this instance, it worked because
Mhm.
I think you would agree. Like she would say something, and then it's almost like a reflection in her mind of something much bigger, but it all flowed together so well.
It did, and it didn't feel like I felt like each scene that was in there needed to be in there. Like,
Absolutely.
you
There was
know
no
how
fluff.
sometimes yeah, sometimes authors will put in a scene just to be like, "Well, I need to create a character dynamic, or I need to move the plot forward, and this is how I'm going to do it." But this just it was just so organic, like, it was just her experience, and
Exactly.
we were experiencing this with her.
Exactly, exactly, and the thing is, though, she is also so complex as a narrator as well because, you know, we are limited in her perspective. We're talking about Erin. Erin's our main character, by the way. We'll introduce all the characters. Um, and what's really interesting is that she's not a perfect narrator either. You know,
Mhm.
she's very
Right.
imperfect, and yet we still get such richness about what's going on, about her emotions, but again, using that show don't tell type of writing style. It's
Right.
unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, and I also wanna say that the descriptions were so I was never scared during the book, but I was always uneasy.
I was grossed out in some of them. I will
Yes.
say
Yes.
this is a horror book straight, you know, through and through, but there is some very very gross descriptions in it. Um but again, it's not all gross descriptions. There's a real
Mm.
balance of interpersonal interactions and what and the grossness kind of serves a purpose of a stark reality of what's happening objectively. It's
Yeah.
very clever. It's a very clever way to use kind of this gory, gross, like disgusting type of imagery. But it was
Hmm.
very effective.
I think so too. And like some of the scenes, I didn't even. What I really liked is that because a lot of horror stories, they'll do cliche things
Mm,
that you kind of see coming.
yeah.
But with this, I was like, every scene, I was like, I didn't see that coming. I
No, no.
and
There was
and
one major one that I was like, "Whoa, how did I miss that?" It was, and we'll get
yeah,
into that, but
and you know how there are movies where you'll be in the daylight and it kind of lets the audience know, oh, this character is safe right now because it's not the nighttime.
right.
But she was never safe.
No, no,
It
no
was
matter where she was,
every chapter there was something, and
no matter where she
um,
was.
I wouldn't have made it, Jane.
No, me neither. Like I love horror and this was getting to be like a lot for me and I'm like I'm so glad I don't do this. Like this is
I,
so good that I
I would
live
have
in
been like,
reality.
I lived a good life.
I'm done now.
I'm done.
Oh my God, that's funny. But so we're gonna wrap up the non-spoiler sections by
Mhm.
just saying, would you recommend this to people? I know people might want to click off if they don't want to be spoiled with it, but for to close this little section, would you recommend this? And if you would, to who?
Yes, 5 out of 5. People who love horror. I wouldn't recommend it to people who their stomach turns easily
Yeah. Yeah.
because there are a lot of things that are gory in this. But I would, and well, there's a lot of trigger warnings
Yeah.
with heavy stuff, like dealing with death.
Yes.
And
Mourning and
yeah,
yeah. Grief horror.
yep. So if you don't want to read that, then don't read this book. But everybody else, if you want to read it, definitely read it.
It's different than what you probably expect.
Hmm.
That's my caveat. It's a very good book. It's beautifully written, masterful storytelling, rich characters, but it's different than what you think it's going to be going in. So, but in the very best way possible. So,
Hmm.
so we will now jump into some spoilers. It is a free for all now. If you don't want to be spoiled by for if you don't want to be spoiled for Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman, um, thank you so much for viewing and come back after you read it and let me know in the comments what you thought of it because this is a book that we need to discuss. So from here on out, we are doing spoilers. Sam, oh my goodness, this book is full of spoilers. Like
I
I feel
know.
like I can't even say anything about it because everything's a spoiler.
I know. I don't want to give away spoilers because it's like I want people to experience it for themselves. But I want to give away the spoilers because I need to talk to you
I know. So, last warning from here on out, we are going full spoilers,
about it.
everything what happens, all the characters. And even if you do hear about the spoilers, it's definitely worth experiencing anyway, because I think this book is a book to be experienced, even if you know what happens. So, so with that, Sam, what did you think of our main character and the bad boy Silas's relationship?
Oh my gosh, it was so manipulative. Like Silas, I knew, okay, so so when I read this, I was like, ghosts. This is definitely about ghosts. It's
It's not
not
about
about
ghosts.
ghosts.
Not about ghosts.
It's about the drugs.
Well, yeah, so one of the major themes is addiction
Yes.
and codependent relationships and abusive
Mhm.
relationships.
Mhm.
Like I said, a lot of really dark, heavy themes that are very, very real, tied into a supernatural
Mhm.
uh, backdrop as well. So that's actually what I loved about this. That was what I was not expecting. Like when you read it, you think, oh, they take a drug. You know, when you read the synopsis, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they take a drug and they say ghost, and it like that's the unknown.
Yeah.
And you think like the addiction part is a backdrop. You think it's like such a
Yeah.
small detail. It's not.
It's the whole book.
It's a
The
starring
whole book is
role,
about addiction.
and it's so good though. It
Yes.
is so good, and it makes so much sense to wrap up
Mhm.
this whole idea of addiction and grief and, the downward spiral of somebody's psyche. It was so brilliantly done.
Like, I did not expect the drug to be called Ghost, and so when they say ghost eaters, I
Yeah.
when I picked up the book, I was like, "Oh, oh, the ghosts are eating them?" No,
Yeah,
no,
right?
they're
And
eating
that
the
that's a weird
ghosts.
thing too, where you're
That's
like, "Oh." Yeah, but,
but,
yeah.
I loved, that theme of where they're talking about here, you talk first. My
So,
little one came out.
that's okay. So basically, like Sam said, I was just so taken aback by how heavy the theme of addiction was here, because
Mhm,
basically the whole premise is that this group of friends are in kind of like a party lifestyle, and their leader is kind of like this bad boy, cool boy that everybody's in love with, and they do a lot of drugs. And so through his grief about losing a very close family member, he discovers a drug to see dead people. And so it starts off as a way to like alleviate his grief. um, but then it turns into something so much more sadistic in a way. Um, and so, like Sam said, I was really surprised about how in depth this book goes into about addiction and about drug use and about the consequences of using this particular drug and the philosophical and metaphorical elements to that. And it was really really interesting because, like you said, I didn't expect it to be all about addiction. So, Sam.
yeah. Oh, I also wanna talk about the cover of the book. I
Yes.
really like that they used this picture because I feel like it reminded me of the scene where she sees the lady outside with the sheet
Hmm.
on her face, and that kind of marked the beginning, I think, of where the addiction started.
I agree. I agree. Um, and so basically the whole premise of this, guys, and again, this is a spoiler, is that they take this drug and they can see ghosts.
Mhm.
And they go into it thinking they're going to see like one ghost or see someone that they loved, but it turns out that they see all the ghosts. And I mean
Yep.
all the ghosts, every ghost there is. And there's a lot of ghosts. And basically the whole idea is that now that she sees them, she can't escape it, which mirrors her idea of which mirrors this idea of addiction.
Mhm.
That's where that the plot and the supernatural elements and the real themes come together so so beautifully. So I agree. I actually forgot about that, and then I think it was really interesting that a lot of them are in like plastic sheets too, like plastic like
Right.
coating, which I was like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. What did you think about that, Sam?
Well, I wondered if, like like the people who were maybe, like, halfway murdered and rolled up in
Mm,
plastic sheets,
true.
and those were just the people who weren't able to rest,
Hmm.
and, oh, like, do you remember that scene where she was at dinner with her parents
Parents, that was
and the guy crawled
hard
across her
to watch.
table and,
Yeah.
like, licked her, and she was like,
Yeah, just like, and everyone's
and
like,
her
"What's wrong with
parents are
this
just
girl?"
like, "Are you high? Why
Yeah,
are you high at your dad's birthday?"
I know, I know. It was so good. Something that I want to talk about is kind of the relationship of and the role of Silas with Erin.
Mhm.
Erin's our main protagonist, and Silas is this kind of counterpart. He's a really, really bad boy. He's tough. He's kind of the leader of the group. Um, and so I kind of thought it was interesting that when we opened up, he's literally grave robbing. Like, he just dives in there and he's like desecrating an entire grave, and he's like, "Come on guys, this will be fun." And everyone's like, "What the heck?"
Mhm.
But it seemed to me that a lot of like the psychedelic, like out of body, like creepy experience actually started before they even started using Ghost. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes, 'cause, the first scene, I think she saw something in the distance, And then it
Yeah,
ended up being flashlights. But I actually feel like her addiction started
I bet.
way more. Hi, Peg. Her addiction started way before she started using the drug.
I
And
agree.
that addiction was actually Silas. That was her
That's what I
main
thought too.
addiction.
I thought too,
The
because
drug was just secondary to it
because
because love is an
I was
addiction.
thinking about that too, because oh, she's free.
Oh, I'm still here. Oh, she's frozen. Um,
Are we back?
oh, I hear you. I hear you.
Are we back? There we are. Okay.
We're
It
good.
froze, and I was like, "Oh goodness, no." I was thinking about that too, because at the end of the day, I feel like the drug ghost was, in a way, her relationship with Silas, or even
Mhm,
Silas himself, that
mhm.
he was kind of this bad influence. He was this thing that she couldn't give up, just like the drug. So, and we find out quite literally they are one and the same at the end. And so I thought that was really interesting that, along with this idea of addiction to an actual substance, she is more exploring an addiction to another person and this codependency. And we
Mhm.
know Silas is not a good influence. Like, he is a really bad influence. And we know that from the start. And yet, even towards the very, very end, she still cannot give him up. So I thought that was
Right.
a brilliant element of this book.
Right. It wasn't until like the last 5% of the book where she's like, okay, it's time to go. Because there were so many times when she tried to get rid of him, but she kept coming back for more because of that addiction to him. And it just it just goes to show how difficult it is to not only get um, rid of substances, but people from your life that are that you're so codependent on, and I felt like it was very realistic.
Hello.
Oh my!
That's awesome. I definitely agree, Sam. And I think that was one of the more impactful parts of this book, is that we do see her struggle to let him go. And she knows that he's not good for her. Like, we've seen that from the very beginning. She knows that, she's this is the last time I'm going to bail him out. This is the last time I'm going to hang out with him. But at the same time, she spends this entire book trying to get back with him in a ghost realm. And so it really speaks to that idea that this relationship was not healthy. And
Mhm.
yet, in a way, it was addictive to her, and just as much as like a drug addiction is.
Mhm.
So,
And, I also really like how
yes, and
I'm trying
yes.
to choose the word choice here. I like how the the substance haunted everybody differently,
Yes.
from each of the groups. So it kind of shows how, like, how the usage, um, is different for everybody. Because you I don't know exactly what happened to Amara, but you saw her take it once. And actually, the best friend I could relate to with the most because she was like just scared straight. And she's like, never again.
She
And
was the most sensible of them all.
yes,
I
she
liked
was.
Amara.
Yes, she
I really liked her. I was like, we should hang out with Amara
like
more. Forget
she
Silas.
wouldn't even talk about it at all. She was just like, I'm done with it. And even when Aaron was like, I know you see them. I know you see the ghosts. And Amara's like, nope, I'm moving. I'm done.
I know. That's one thing I kind of wish we got more time with her, and we did kind of see what she saw, because she did spend so much time saying, "Oh, I don't see anything, the drug didn't work for me." But we along with Erin know that she did. So I almost wonder if she saw something related to the guilt between
Hmm.
her relationship with Silas that we find out about as well. And that's kind of like why she buries it deep down, because there seems to be a little bit of guilt there. Um,
Yeah,
but that's one thing I do wish we found out a little bit more about, because I liked Amara. She was one of my
I did
favorites.
too.
I liked her better
And
than Tobias.
Oh, I could not stand Tobias because he was just he just stood behind Silas's shadow. Like he was Silas's shadow.
Yeah.
He I hated how he looked up so much to Silas and how he wanted to be Silas so much just because he liked Aaron. And he's
Right.
like, I can't get
Yeah.
with Aaron unless I become Silas, which I did not see coming how
Yeah.
Silas took
Yeah.
over
Which
Tobias.
I feel like we should have for some reason because
Mhm.
we spent so much time establishing that Tobias is not cool. He is not suave, he is not
No, he
charming.
couldn't
He is
even
like the
talk to women.
yeah, he's like, this kind of like bumbling guy in the background following around like a puppy. And then suddenly, for
Mhm,
some reason, we see him have all this success with this enterprise and have this devil may care attitude. And for some reason, it goes right above my head.
mhm.
Like I never saw that twist coming. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it makes sense because of Silas's characterization about he's being like this parasitic force with everybody in the group.
Mhm.
Oh my
Super
gosh.
toxic. Can we also talk about, the baby, the half
Yeah.
baby?
Yeah, talk
I
about that,
was
Sam, because I had mixed feelings about that. I wanna hear what you think.
I I mean, like, I didn't see that coming either. I was just like, well, I there was a little bit of foreshadowing
Yeah.
with the, "Don't you wanna start a family?" I think who was it? Oh, it was the guy she was dating. The nice guy,
Oh,
wasn't it, who
yes.
brought it
I
up? I
forget his
always
name. He
forget
was
about
very
him.
nice. We forget about him, and that's
She
pretty
didn't want
accurate. In
the
the
nice
rest of the
guy.
story, everybody forgot about him.
She's like, "I want the daredevil."
I want
Um,
Silas, and he's dead,
but,
so, like, okay.
but the I I feel like the half baby, because it wasn't like a fully formed baby ghost
Yeah.
that came about. I feel like it represented, one, how she was kind of halfway into the life, that she should be in. And
Mm.
what, like, wanting to start a family and get a good job and live a normal life, or what we would
Yeah.
consider normal. And then I also think it represented how, when you have addiction, uh,
Mm.
things kind of, uh, well, you can go a little crazy, and
Yeah.
your perspective is very distorted with
Yeah.
addiction. So that's what I felt about the baby.
I agree too, and I think Erin, along with wanting Silas as he is, I think she kind of wanted an idealized version of their life too. You know what I mean?
Yes,
And I think that's what
absolutely.
makes this so sad is that we know as readers, like Silas was never gonna be a white picket fence, 2.5 kids, finance
Nope,
guy,
nope.
driving to the beach on the weekends. Like he was never gonna be that to Erin. But
Yeah,
that's because of like his lifestyle and his personality. Like it just never was gonna materialize. But and I think but despite that, despite knowing that, Erin still hopes for that throughout this entire
yeah.
story, and I think that's one of the most tragic parts of this book is that I think that's why she kinda kept coming back because she had this idea of like, "Well, I'll change him or he'll change for me," or some type of psychological pull there that it's never gonna work out, but she just so wishes that it would.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and I think a big part of the addiction too with her, and Silas was the addiction of wanting to fix him. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
that isn't even part of drugs. It happens to a lot of women when they get in
Yes.
very toxic relationships.
Yes. I
They will
agree.
stay, for the sole reason of thinking that they can fix the man instead of
Change
just
him.
accepting that's just who they are, and if they wanna change, they're gonna change for themselves, not for you.
I agree. I totally agree,
Mhm.
and Silas never changed, and he never will change as a
Mm-mm, even
character.
in
Like, we
death,
just
even in
even in
death.
death, like, he literally took advantage of everybody,
Mhm,
and I don't even think that's the addiction part of him. I think it's really was just his personality, because
mhm.
even before all this started, he's the one leading them into the cemetery to grave rob,
Right.
he's the one that's kinda, like, making fun of Tobias. He's the one that obviously started an affair with Erin's best friend while they were together. Like this is not,
Yeah.
you know, this
This is
even
not a good
before
guy.
even before the whole ghost thing came in, like he is a majorly flawed man. And he is not a good influence on any of these characters. And yet at the same time, he's still the shining star of it all, which is so interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Like he
yeah.
was gone for half the time, except he was there the whole time.
I
And
know.
I think that also goes to the symbolism of when she keeps writing Aaron is here.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's like
Talk
the
about that a
ghosts are
little bit,
always
Sam.
there with us. And uh, also the I like how the author used throughout the book. I'm talking to somebody right now, sweetie. Oh, oh, be careful! She almost fell out of her chair.
Oh
Um,
goodness. Careful
I
over there.
like I like in between the writing and dialogue. It goes, "Do you want to get haunted?"
Yes.
And it made me think about how substance users will um, it will often just creep into their life. Like they'll just be doing something randomly, and then they just think of it.
Yeah, and it's like this pull and like this
Yeah,
almost
this pulse.
uncontrollable. And I love
Yes.
the way the author wrote that, where he'll just interject that, like she'll misheard
Hmm.
something and she'll hear that, or um just certain like words like, oh, the nursery, I mean the office, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I loved how the author did that because it showed the effect it was having
Hmm.
within her own thought process. It I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just a really, really brilliant detail to show that even in her narration, this is gonna be a constant, like, pull, even
Hmm.
subconsciously, and kind of the ghost, like, impact into her thinking. It was such a brilliantly written book, it really
It
was.
really was. I also want to know what you think because I think because I my big question at the end
Mhm.
was, did they actually see ghosts or was it just them the whole time? And I think that it was just them the whole time because they were almost seeing their idealized version of the person they wanted to see, and then it slowly crumbled
That's
as
interesting.
they used more and got more addicted. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
the imagery at the
Uh,
very end
it
while they're
is so
all just like
gross.
packed in the house
It is
and they're just
gross,
like
but it's so good.
laying, and like they're all half dead, like
Yeah.
laying next to each other. Don't worry, my daughter's in the room now, but
I was like,
they're like
"Oh."
all like rotting away, and
Yeah.
it was very realistic to how it actually is. I felt so bad for the mother
Yeah.
who lost her
Yeah.
son, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Have you seen my baby?"
I
And
totally
she
agree.
just keeps getting skinnier and skinnier every time you see her. And I was like, "Oh," and like I said, I was never scared during
No.
the book. I was just uneasy a lot
Yeah.
of the time.
Like, you could see what was happening, but at the same time, it was very
Mhm.
disorienting. So you didn't
Absolutely.
something that I thought was really interesting is that it feels like the author plays with time here too. Like,
Mhm.
it seemed like it reads, like, so fluid and so, like, consecutive, but when you
Mhm.
step back, you realize there are big time jumps that we didn't even notice in the
Mhm.
book.
I
Like,
almost wonder if, like, months or even a year went past.
that's what I think too, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it reads like it's all happening in one moment, which of
Mhm.
course is within her mind. Like she probably is losing sense of time. She is probably having blackouts. She's probably, her mind isn't functioning well under this influence. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And but I thought that was so interesting because she's like, "Oh, I just left here 48 hours ago. How did he like set up shop to sell all this in 48 hours?" You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think there's a really good play of time in this book because we don't really know how much time is passing. And remember
Yeah.
when the mother said like, "Oh, we've called for days, like, or maybe even weeks. I don't recall.
Yeah.
You haven't answered any of our calls." And we're like, "Has it been weeks? It feels like this is all happening in 2 hours, you know?" And
Mhm.
so I thought that was a really smart detail that the author played with.
I think so too, and I also believe that Oh gosh, I lost my train of
That's okay.
thought. I'll come back to it.
I agree. Um,
Um,
one thing that
oh, I know what I know what I was going to say.
okay.
I also think that it was really good. Well, not good, but I think it showed how when you are grieving or you feel like you're different and you don't have a solid support system that isn't toxic,
Mm,
then that can lead you to that lifestyle.
yeah,
And it's it's sad because it happens in a moment.
yeah.
Like it's kind of like that drug heroin. It's like once you take it, a lot of people are just addicted and it's really hard to get off of it. And I was just like I feel like it displayed that so well that when you don't have a support system, when you don't have healthy relationships with people,
Mm.
if you're a little too curious, then curiosity killed the cat. Like,
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting is that it seems like she could have had a really great life if she wasn't hanging around with Silas.
oh,
Like, it seems like her
absolutely.
parents were wealthy. She
Mhm.
had this job lined up that nobody gets right outside of college.
Mhm.
Um, she had the potential for a great relationship with that other guy. And like she
Mhm.
had objectively she had a beautiful life. And yet
Yes.
because of Silas's influence, it was slowly being taken away from her. And actually ruined. I would say that it was ruined after the episode and her first day at the internship and her relationship with her parents. But again, like these are things that we're seeing metaphorically happen, but
Mhm.
it can occur when somebody's too far into this addiction. You know what I mean? So it
Mhm.
was a really interesting way that the author did that because we can see these things like chipping away from her because she's so deep in this ghost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like we were talking about before the live stream, I almost wonder if she did die at the very end. And because, I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, if I wouldn't have made it,
No, no.
I, I
This
am
was a
just
tough
not
book.
that type of person who would do well with that stuff. So
Me neither.
I'd be like, if I started seeing the ghosts, I'd be like, you know what? I lived a good life. I lived a good life. I'm gonna write my letters to people and tell them how much they meant to me. And then, nope. I'm just gonna let the ghost take me.
Interesting question. Do you think Silas so obviously one of the main kickoffs of this book is that Silas lost his mom in a very tragic car accident while he was in the car, and he sees some really, really gory things in the course of that.
Hmm.
Um, do you think that was a turning point for Silas to kind of go bad, or do you think he was already kind of bad even before that?
It's hard to say
Mm,
because I wish we would have learned more about his relationship with his father, but we don't really hear anything about that. But oh man, that image of his mother.
that freaked me out. I think I messaged you and I was like,
I know.
I'm shook. Like there was this image about like what his mother looked like after the car accident, and I was just like, oh God. It was just so mentally clear for me, and it bothered me. I had to put down the book for a minute.
Um, especially when he was a kid. So I wonder if I mean I don't know much about it, but I feel like because he was a kid, it affected him way more when he saw his
Yeah,
mom because he couldn't. I mean, I don't even know how I would process that as a child.
yeah. I do think that was a bit of a turning point for him because
Hmm.
we see that years later when he's in college, he's still like searching for her. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I do think that's another tragic part of this book is that Silas is kinda like this ringleader, he's smart, he's manipulative, he's this
Hmm.
bad influence, but you kind of have to wonder if he didn't witness that, would he have almost the same life as Aaron was going to have too? And that's the saddest part of this book
I
too.
know
It's so good.
because again, it's like Erin, she had a really good life, but still she chose the other way. She chose the other side of the tracks.
She she chose Silas.
She did.
What's really
Oh,
interesting is that Silas seems to have so much influence with everybody, not just
mhm.
Erin, which I think is
Yeah.
really kind of interesting.
Yeah, 'cause, even with Amara, she was very grief-stricken when she when she heard the news when he died, and I think the way that she dealt with it was to just move away.
Yeah,
She had a very avoidant tendency,
absolutely.
and
It's
honestly, I
absolutely.
would totally be like Amara. I'd be like, "I don't see anything, because 'cause I'm in real life, I am very afraid of ghosts. I'm pretty sure my parents' house is haunted, and
Oh,
I'm always like, "I don't wanna see it. I don't wanna touch it. I don't
I
wanna
don't want to
smell it.
hear it.
I don't wanna hear it." I
Everybody go
when
to sleep.
when my
You're telling
my
who's boss, Sam. Don't let him bully you. It's probably
my
Silas.
brother has told me stories about Ouija boards, and I'm like, "Nope,
No, I
I don't
don't play
wanna
with
hear
Ouija
it.
boards. No.
I don't
The
wanna do
thing is,
it."
my mom is like, "Oh, we'll play Ouija." And I'm like, "Well, what?" Like, "No, we're not
No,
playing Ouija. We're not doing
no.
that. You don't play the Ouija board, okay? You don't do that." Um, yeah,
You
no,
don't
I
touch
don't touch
that.
that stuff. Um,
Yeah, so even the curiosity, I was so surprised that Amara did it. And
I
maybe she
know.
did it because of the peer pressure, because at the very first scene, she eventually, it kind of foreshadowed, because she eventually succumbed to peer pressure with her
Yeah,
friends. And she was like, "Oh, I guess we'll go into the," I think they went into a
yeah,
mausoleum, and she
yeah,
was like, "I guess I'll go in."
yeah.
And but she
Well,
was
follow
not
Silas,
about
I
it.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so maybe it was just the peer pressure, but I if I was in her shoes, I'd be like, "Okay, somebody needs to watch you guys, because one of us is getting us home tonight."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. See, I just wouldn't even go. I'd just be like, "I'm staying home. I'm gonna get my jammies, guys. Listen,
Don't
no,
don't.
no,
You can
no.
tell me about it
Tell me
later.
about it in the morning. I'll make
Well,
us some tea. It'll be fine, but
I'll
no.
sit here with
You can
you and
show up
let
at
you
my
have
house
your spiel.
at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll make the tea, but I'm not coming with you. That's not my vibe. It's not my
Yep.
place." So
I'll be your moral support buddy.
from way back here, way back here. Tell me
But
about it later. Give me the tea. Um, so something else that's kind of interesting, and I just had it and I just lost it. Oh my goodness. This whole idea of like recruitment too.
Mhm.
Because you notice that, like, Tobias, Silas Tobias now, um, he's kind of hell bent on like, we need to get more people, we need to get more people, we need to like have more
Yeah.
people experience this horrible thing. And then also, I thought it was interesting that when you found out about the mushrooms that the drug's actually made of, it's very similar too. Like it's
Mhm.
using a host and then the spores go out and it affects other hosts and then
That was weird.
you harvest this and then make it into the pill to infect other people. I just thought that was really interesting, and I was wondering if you had
Yeah.
any thoughts about that because these are
It
two very similar themes we're seeing.
it made me wanna take a shower.
Me
I
too,
was
yeah.
like, "Ew, that's so gross." Um, but I guess it makes sense. It was believable to me that, like, maybe it would start growing into their body, because their body was infected with the fungus, because they
But
used so
she
much.
had a fungal infection when she went to the hospital, and I just, ooh, ugh,
Yeah,
ugh,
how do you get rid of that? Like,
ugh, in your bloodstream. I'm just, ooh.
that's nasty. But I guess addiction is gross. So
You know what I think is really interesting? You know, throughout all of this, she has spent so much time trying to get Silas back from the spirit realm and like
mhm,
call him forward and all this. And then at the very end, we see Silas kind of use her and kind of plan to dispose of her just like to use her basically to
Yes.
make more drugs, which I thought that was really interesting, where I'm like,
Yes.
"Oh my god," like, because you can almost convince yourself like, "Oh, maybe they did have a great connection," which I know is probably part of Silas's personality that reels him back in. But you can almost think about like maybe they did have connection. She spent so much time, she's given up her health, she's given up her sanity to try to like bring him back, but then we see that he was literally gonna plant her in the ground and use her for drugs. You know what I mean? That part too bothered me so much because I was like, you
Yeah.
see his motivations and you truly see his personality in that and how
Mm.
exactly she doesn't mean anything to him, really, but you can
Right.
convince yourself it does, just like she convinces herself.
Right. And the part where I know it was Tobias, but it wasn't Tobias. It was Silas in Tobias.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, using somebody else.
using somebody. Yeah. I was at first I was surprised that she started helping Tobias recruit people and make the drugs, but then I was like, "Oh, I guess it makes sense because she was so hooked on it." But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm like, "How can you be so hooked when you see the ghosts? I would be so scared."
Yeah. A
I
ghost made
really
out with you on at your
I'm
parents'
like
dinner table, okay?
I'm
Like,
like,
how about we cut this now?
let's think about the pros and cons
Yeah.
here, okay? You
Let's
see
make a
your
list and sit
loved
down,
one
let's write
for
it
just
down.
like 5 minutes, and then for the rest of your life, you see the ghosts. Like,
Something else that's kind of interesting, it doesn't really feel like we actually get Silas throughout all this drug use. Did you
yeah,
pick up on that? Like,
hmm,
she's spending so much time and she's like it feels like she's almost convincing herself that this mist or this
right.
being is Silas,
But he's not actually there.
but
It's
he's
just
not. Yeah.
inside of her.
Yeah.
It's
Is
kind
it
of
well,
like
it's inside
when
Tobias.
it made me feel like when we dream. And when we dream, things are very, we can see things a lot better than when we're like just going about our day. It's like we're actually there.
Yeah.
So maybe it just like put her in a dream-like state. And
Yeah.
that's
But
what,
that's the thing too. Like, it feels like Tobias was never actually there too. Like,
hmm,
not Tobias, sorry.
Silas.
Silas
Yeah.
was in Tobias, but all of this like use and this, she was there like, I need to see Silas. I need to like bring him back. I need to spend more time with him. But then we find out he was never actually there. So you wonder like what it was exactly. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I was actually really surprised by Tobias. I feel like Tobias wouldn't have been tricked into using the substances. I feel like I don't know. I don't know if he was just not didn't have any willpower, but at the same time, I'm like, what? Why was it him? I
yeah.
feel like I know he was the catalyst to start the recruiting and everything and the seance, but I don't. I almost feel like wouldn't it have been Erin because she was so closely tied to Silas?
Yeah. But then I think also the whole point is that Silas wasn't that tied to her, like, she was tied to
Yeah,
him, but I
yeah.
don't think he was I think it's more that Tobias had a very weak personality, and he really wanted,
Okay, so he was
Silas's
easily
approval.
manipulate.
Yeah,
Okay,
he, like,
yes.
wanted her approval, and so he was easier to
Mhm,
overtake. Um,
mhm,
I think Erin would have been willing as well, but I don't again, and this is part of like we see Silas have bad behavior with everybody else, like
mhm.
Amara, getting all his friends into this and destroying people's lives in their grief and they're wanting to see their loved ones and this
Yeah,
really disregard for people. That's what's motivating. So I don't think he actually had a real connection in his emotions with Erin, but he kind
mhm.
of just like with Tobias, he saw her devotion to him and used it. I think
That
that
makes
that
a
was
lot of
it.
sense,
Doesn't that make
yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, this is such a good book.
It's so good. But again, you can convince yourself that he does because we're in
Yeah.
Erin's perspective and we spend so much time trying to like get him back, but he's a real crap character. Like he's a really crappy person. Like he's the
Yeah.
worst.
I also want to say that I don't usually like books that are from first person,
Yeah.
but I really liked this one, how it
Yeah,
was
me
in first
too. I
person.
noticed that too. I
Yeah.
noticed that too. And I think also he kind of plays on that. I thought it was I thought it was a strange scene when they were in the hospital after she had a procedure done. And I don't know if that's like a bond they're sharing, and that's why Erin is so invested in Tobias because she sees that
Hmm.
they were they were participating in something that created something beautiful, but also
Hmm.
destroyed a part of herself. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's almost like trauma bonding, if that's the right word to say.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
Or maybe she kind of feels like this is the closest thing I have to Silas that's still alive.
right, right.
Because
The
Amara was just like, nope.
That's the thing too. I feel like Amara was the most sensible of them all,
Mhm.
and I really liked her. But
Yeah.
I think seeing that, I think she serves a really interesting purpose where she kind of is the one to kind of whack Aaron, over the head, saying Tobias isn't really that great. You know what I mean? Like he was in a relationship with
Hmm.
you, and we were still seeing each other. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so I really liked her characterization, and again, she's the one that's just like I'm not seeing any ghosts. I'm just getting the heck out of Dodge. Like, and she's such a realistic force, but even she was taken in by Silas. Do you see?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Do you like
Did you see
how the
that?
book, yeah, do you like how the book ended where she went around like kind of like AA, and she's like, now I help people recover from their addiction. And
Yeah,
I do like that it ended with hope because I'm a very positive and hopeful person.
you are.
But but at the same time I'm like, I feel like all the loose ends weren't quite tied up.
Yeah. I really loved the final scene, the very last one, where she's there at the haunted house and
Mhm.
she sees some mushrooms growing and you kind of have this question, is it Silas? Is it not? Is it just some mushrooms? Like is she still like acting kind of out of her
Right.
mind? Or is it really Silas? And then she picks up the mushroom and she pockets it, even though her mind's screaming for her not to. I thought that was one of the best endings I've ever read. It was
Yes, it
it was
and
brilliant
it
because
kind
you
of symbolizes how it's always there no matter
yeah,
what.
yeah, and how easy that
Mhm.
decision is gonna be even if you've done all this hard work, and
I
it's a
know.
hard moment. It
I
was brilliant.
I do wonder how she did not end up in jail.
Yeah,
I know she had good lawyers, but that was a little far-fetched for me. I'm
yeah,
like, "You literally just burned a house down with a bunch of people in
yeah, and she
it."
got, like, what, community service? And we're like, "Okay," like, an entire, like, complex, but alright. Alright, Erin. But, I just thought that last scene was so poignant because we as readers also want to say, don't do it, like the
Mhm,
past is the past. This is done. Silas is gone. You don't have to like step in, but she's almost compelled to make that choice to bring him home. It just ah that ruined me. It was so good. It was
mhm.
so good. It was
Yeah, because
unexpected
it's like,
too.
how much can you once that happens, how much can you actually tear yourself away from it?
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people who don't have addictive tendencies don't really understand,
Mm,
is that it's always going to be there
right.
no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was just the way it was written, it was so good. I thought that was one of the best
Yeah,
endings. Just
I
oh my goodness.
everybody read this book. I wish I
Definitely
could read
read
it
it.
for the first time again.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And something that I find really interesting too is that when she was seeing the ghosts, and like when it was really bad, like in the office setting and in her like her parents' dinner, like
Mhm.
these ghosts were acting gross. You know what I mean? Like they were all up in her business, just clawing at her and just it was
Well,
very like uncomfortable.
I also wonder too, because I feel like the goriness and the grossness of it symbolizes how, because a lot of people, when they're in it, they kind of romanticize things. But it kind of, I feel like it symbolized how it actually is.
I
It's
agree.
actually really terrible,
And the
and it's really gross
destruction
and
and yeah.
destructive, yes.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just so unflinching and just it
Mhm.
makes you uncomfortable, but at the same time, she's gonna go back to it and get another,
Yeah.
dose and just and you notice her doses keep increasing too,
Mhm.
and just it was such a beautiful exploration of addiction and addictive behavior. It really
Yeah.
was in a very unflinching and sometimes uncomfortable way, but man, it was good. It was such a good book.
Mhm. I think it's so too.
I know. I know. I want to read it again too. But it was so
Ah,
unexpected as well.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so Sam, final thoughts? Anything else we want to discuss, explore today?
Um, well, it definitely wasn't a book that gave me nightmares, but it was a book that made me feel icky.
Mm, yeah.
And I'm glad I read it. I actually think that it's a good book to show people who don't have addictive tendencies kind of how it is.
Yes, I agree. In a very like upfront but non-threatening way, too.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, I agree. I think it's a beautiful book. It has all these really, really deep explorations, but it tells the story in a way that's palatable.
Yeah.
With this whole like idea of it being a ghost story and it being supernatural. So
Mhm.
you see what's happening, but you're getting the meaning of it much more directly. So I enjoyed it. I don't think this is a book for everyone, especially if you don't like gore or gross things or horror or some
Nope.
really, really heavy subjects.
Yeah.
But if you handle that and if you're interested in it, definitely read Ghost. I almost said Ghost Story. Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. So, well, Sam, I wanted to thank you so much. I'm so glad you got to like hang out with me on our Halloween special.
I know. And everybody, I'll be back sometime on YouTube. And things get a little less
The Queen of
hectic.
Poetry will reign again.
Life has been fun lately, but you know, YouTube has to come second. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. As long as you're having fun and enjoying it, that's all.
Yeah.
Mhm. And with that, where can people find you? Like Greener Side of Sam, right?
Yes, greener side of Sam.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Happy Halloween.